Hey, it's Tyler. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Are you trying to start a podcast but you're not really sure which microphone to purchase? Well, hopefully this video can help you pick the right microphone for your podcast. There are a ton of different microphones to choose from, but there are two main categories that are popular amongst podcasters, those being the condenser microphones and the dynamic microphones. These are essentially different capsule types and work in a different way to pick up sound, but that's not what's important for us. What is important is the end result characteristics. For example, a condenser will have a much more detailed, airy, and richer sound to it in comparison to a dynamic microphone, which has much better background rejection and a broadcasty radio type of tone that you may be familiar with existing podcasts or radio shows. So now you're probably asking, how do I pick between a dynamic and a condenser microphone? Well, like I mentioned a moment ago, dynamic microphones are much better at rejecting background noise, and in my opinion, this is the number one consideration between the two for a podcast. This is important because if you record in a room with bad acoustics or bad reverberation, there's going to be a lot of reflections bouncing back off the wall into the microphone, and that can be a problem with condensers. With dynamics, it helps mitigate that quite a bit. If you're recording in a room that's relatively dead, and it's a solo podcast or a maximum of one guest, then a condenser may actually serve you really well. Just make sure you purchase a condenser microphone with a cardioid pattern so that it only picks up the front of the capsule and rejects the back and the sides. And if you are recording with a guest, make sure you point the microphones in opposite directions to maximize the background rejection between the two guests. For those of you that don't have a well-treated room, a dynamic will probably serve you much better. Since they reject more background noise, they help mitigate the reflections that bounce off the walls as well as the voices of your fellow guests, in turn isolating your voice much better. So now I'm going to do a quick microphone test to really demonstrate the differences between the two. This should help you guys get a better idea of what I've been talking about. So for this test, I'm going to play an episode from my podcast on my phone and place it directly in front of me, opposite of the microphone's capsule so that I can reject the background noise as best as possible. This is a Shure SM7B dynamic microphone. I'm going to start playing the episode at about 50% volume on the iPhone 10. So now it is placed directly in front of me and I'm speaking in a relatively normal volume, just speaking like a normal person, indoor voice type of thing. And yeah, this is how it's rejecting the background noise. I would assume it's pretty good for a dynamic. I'm pretty good because it's a dynamic microphone. And I'm going to switch over to a condenser to give you guys an idea of how they compare directly head to head. Now I'm speaking into the AT4040 condenser microphone directly into the front of the capsule at about the same distance between my mouth and the same distance from the phone. Exact same volume, exact same everything. But you should be able to notice a small difference in terms of the background noise rejection. It should be louder in terms of picking up the phone itself. I haven't added anything in post-production besides volume normalization to just ensure that the volume levels between the two microphones are even. So I'm going to switch between the two quickly back and forth to give you guys an even stronger idea of the difference. Just speaking like a normal person, indoor voice, but you should be able to notice a small difference in terms of the background noise rejection. Just speaking like a normal person, indoor voice, but you should be able to notice a small difference in terms of the background noise rejection. The differences may seem pretty subtle between the two, but when you have 3 or 4 people speaking in a podcast in the same room with bad acoustics, it can get pretty bad with the condenser. So in the final mix, it'll actually sound a lot better if you use dynamic microphones. So after you've decided whether you want a condenser or a dynamic microphone, you need to think about the termination, this meaning USB connection or XLR. The big difference between the two is really just convenience. For USB microphones, you can plug them directly into your computer. Possibly need to install some drivers, but besides that, you're pretty much good to go and record directly into the computer for one microphone. The downside to USB microphones is that you can run into issues with having multiple microphones going into one computer. It gets pretty complicated. You also don't have the flexibility to use a field recorder such as the Zoom H6, which utilizes an XLR termination for all the microphones. The reason you would have this is because it's much more reliable in terms of recording. It has batteries to back it up, it records to an SD card, and I've never had it crash before. With computers, with USBs, your software might crash, your computer might crash, your battery might die for some reason. Something can go wrong and it's really frustrating to lose your recording that way. With XLR microphones, you have a lot more upgradability. You have flexibility to use like an audio interface or a field recorder. On top of that, it's much easier to record multiple microphones into one device and keep all the files together. It also allows for multi-track recording, which comes in a lot of field recorders as a feature. So essentially, all the microphones are recorded as separate audio files, so you can edit them and configure them all separately and individually instead of having everything down mixed to one file, and you can't really fix it in post. Personally, if you can't pick between the two, you can get a microphone that features both terminations, and I'll let you guys know a microphone that does have that in a bit. So finally, I'm going to give you guys some microphone recommendations. For condensers, I don't have as much experience with them as in compared to dynamic microphones, but right now I actually really like these two microphones from Lewitt. the LCT 240 Pro microphone and the LCT 440 Pure microphone. The 240 is about $150 and the 440 is about $270. So they're pretty expensive, but they sound really solid and they have great self-noise floors. And I'm sure there are a ton of microphone tests online for you to take a listen to. For dynamics, I actually have a handful of recommendations to give you guys. First up, I have the Rode Pod mic, which is a really good option. It's actually specifically designed for podcasting, as you may get from the name itself. It has an amazing metal construction body, super freaking heavy. It feels like quality. It looks awesome and it sounds pretty great as well. One thing I did notice with this microphone though is that it's a little bit brighter in terms of the sound signature. So it doesn't really emphasize the bass as much, so you may or may not like that. But I actually think it's a positive, and they designed it that way specifically to clear up the mix for multiple guests in one episode. It's a lot harder to listen to an episode or a podcast when there's so much bass or rumble from people's voices kind of clashing with each other. Oh, also, one thing to note for this microphone is that it's an XLR microphone. There's no USB termination, so you will need an interface of some sort to use it. And it doesn't include any accessories, like you need a cable for it as well. You'll probably need a windscreen to reduce the plosives and also a stand to mount this thing on something. Next up, I have the SM57 microphone, which is actually made for drums and instruments, but it doubles really well as a vocal or podcast microphone. And it can be used as a handheld microphone as well. So it's really versatile. And it's about, I think, $89. I'll correct it here if I'm wrong. But yeah, unfortunately, this one doesn't come with a windscreen and no cable, once again, being an XLR termination. But it sounds pretty good. In comparison to the Rode Pod mic, it has a warmer sound signature, and there are a ton of tests online for you guys to listen, so you might find this one a little more pleasing to use. It does not handle plosives well, so you will need a windscreen or pop filter of some sort. It also has a brother or counterpart, the SM58, which is basically the exact same body for the microphone. Also sounds very similar, but it has a ball head instead, so that it blocks the plosives a little bit better. If you're looking for a much more budget or starter microphone that has the versatility of both USB and XLR, I would recommend the Samson Q2U. Unfortunately, I don't own this one as well, but I did previously use it and it sounded really great to my ears, especially for the price. And like I said just a second ago, both USB for plug and play for beginners and the XLR termination for upgradability. And it is awesome. It is a great first microphone for podcasters, and it's very cheap. You can currently pick it up for $70 on Amazon.com, which is a great starter budget for a podcast. But my final recommendation is actually the SM7B that I've been speaking into the entire video. This is a much more expensive microphone in comparison to the others that I recommended earlier. The reason I brought this one up last is because this video is meant for beginners or people looking to start a podcast, and you don't really need this at all for a start. It doesn't sound miles better. It's noticeable, but there isn't a massive difference, and for 4 times the price of a lot of these microphones, it really isn't worth it in that sense. Alright, that's the end of the video. If you're interested in any products that I mentioned in the video, I will have links in the description below, which are my affiliate links, and I'll get a little bit kickback if you guys want to support me. But yeah, if you have any questions or any comments or concerns or anything I should have added to this video, just let me know. This is just meant to be a really quick and short video to help you guys pick a microphone and not waste any of your time. Oh, and just to let you guys know, I actually co-host a podcast currently with my buddy Aldrin, and it's a comedy interview podcast that I really enjoy making. I will have a link in the description below as well if you're interested in taking a look. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.